Hello and welcome to the Keeper of the Home podcast. I am Cami, your host here and creator of the blog and YouTube channel called Tidbits and Company. Thank you for joining me as we talk about raising the next generation of homemakers. I seem to like to start my podcast with a question to get you thinking. So here we go. A couple questions for you to think about. Have you noticed a decline in the rising generation's desire to be homemakers? For example, like when you ask our youth what they would like to be when they grow up, do you ever hear someone proudly proclaim their desire to be a homemaker? Now let's take a moment today to reflect on our own attitudes of homemaking as a modern society and ponder the messaging that we're sending out to the next generation of potential homemakers and whether we're giving them the right message that we want to. And may I propose that our influence in these matters is great and can have lasting impacts on many generations yet to come. So it's worth giving it some thought. Now I gotta share with you all these thoughts I'm having that have sparked this podcast idea were brought to me by a kind of hilarious moment that I experienced with my 17-year-old daughter. So she was watching me work in the kitchen, prepping for our next meal, and she oh so reflectively asked me, "Mom, don't you get sick of cooking and cleaning?" I just had to giggle because apparently it takes about 17 years for at least my child to recognize all that I do around the home and perhaps appreciate it, albeit probably subconsciously, but enough to ask that question to me. Don't you get sick of cooking and cleaning? And I just had to giggle. And I'm going to tell you my response to her after we do some podcast housekeeping. And first thing, I am super excited to tell you guys about these new sweaters that I have created for us. I have searched high and low for the perfect cozy sweater that isn't frumpy either. Really cute sweater for us to strut around that has the words on it, Keeper of the Home. And I have 3 different logos for you to choose from so you can find the right one and several color options. But this is something that I have wanted to create for a long time. Basically, it is my own merch, but it is designed with the idea that I want to help us proudly proclaim to the next generation of homemakers what an honor we feel it is to be the keepers of our home. And so I've created a sweater for us to wear so that we can share that message. Now, I am really having high hopes that by the time this podcast is out, those will be available for you on my shop at tidbitsandco.com. If they are not, I am sorry. I'm working to get them ready, but it takes a lot to take all the pictures, get listings made, figure out shipping and whatnot. But if they are not created, please sign up for my newsletter and you'll be the first to know when they're ready and available. And I'm really excited to see if you guys want these. I'm doing my best to price them at a point that will make it so that I can continue to do this. Making products, I've learned, is a very difficult realm when you have things that just cost a lot and you don't want to have to ask your customers for too much. So I'm going to do my best there to price it to where it is worth what I hope it to be. So anyway, keep an eye on that or go and check right now at tidbitsandco.com for these darling sweaters. I really hope you'll love them and I hope you'll help me spread the message to our rising generations of how much we enjoy being a homemaker. All right. And then I might add, you may want to get signed up for my newsletter anyway, because every single week I send out a new vintage art download. I love vintage art. I also really seek out vintage art that is not only beautiful, but I love to find pieces that exude homemaking and families and beautiful homes and interiors and landscapes. So I love to dig around the public domain for those and make them available for you. And I send out a new one every single week in my newsletter. So I will leave a link in the description or in the show notes where you can go and get signed up for that newsletter. I send it out every week. usually on Sunday mornings, so that you can see all the tidbits that I shared on my blog, channel, or podcast, and get that free download. So definitely a fun opportunity for you. And then I just need to do a real quick plug on my friend Andrea's course. Andrea blogs over at the Pine and Prospect Home. That's her YouTube channel as well. And she has worked so hard at a homemaking course called The Heart of Homemaking. And I'll share that link with you. But if you feel like you want to learn more about homemaking, that this is a passion and a desire for you at this moment, I can think of no better source for you to go and learn from Andrea. So I will share that with you. All right. Now, I am grateful when I am talking about this topic of raising homemakers. I am grateful for my audience, because judging on your comments and your reactions and the people that follow me, I guess unless you're a hater and you've come here to tell me that you think homemaking is stupid, my guess is that you are not, that you're actually someone who is passionate about your role as the keeper of your home. And that's why you take the time to be here with me, as I am also very passionate about this and sharing that with the world. So I am not going to even comment on why homemaking is important. I think you already know that. I think you already value that role. And just by listening to me here today, I can see that that's probably who's going to be listening. So we're going to skip over why homemaking is important and talk about raising homemakers. And I know that this idea of wanting to raise our children or then help the next generation become homemakers is not always a popular opinion in today's day and age. And I'm not always one for sugarcoating my thoughts. I know I do have to be careful on what I say online, but I'm not very good at not saying what's in my mind and being super careful with my words. So I apologize for that. If I say anything offensive, for better or worse, that is a trait that I have. I come from a long line of know-it-alls, and so it just comes out. I am a work in progress, though, and I'm working at it. And having teenage daughters is definitely my training ground, as I've learned to be oh so careful with my words so I don't hurt their little sensitive spirits. And I'm grateful that the Lord is ever merciful with me as I learn how to be a little more careful. But I am afraid that I may say things today that maybe you don't agree with, and that is okay. Just take it for food for thought. And I'm sorry if something I say isn't very politically correct in today's world. But let's talk about what I said to my daughter when she asked me if I ever got sick of cooking and cleaning. I feel like this was a moment that she actually just realized that homemaking can sometimes be far from glamorous, right? And this was a realization that she'd had. And I can remember having those same thoughts in my youth. You know, it's a time where you're very self-centered, as it should be. You need to focus on your life and what you're doing. As we try to also help them to look outside at themselves. But this was a good sign that she is growing into a little empathy, that she was thinking, oh man, do I really want to be a mom or a homemaker and just do what my mom is doing all day? Do I really want that? Don't you get sick of it? I could tell she was finally looking outside of herself and pondering her future. And I knew I had to be careful with my response since, I would really like to raise her as a competent homemaker and someone who enjoys this role as well. That is a hope. I want a whole slew of grandbabies, so I really have to try to portray the joy in this work. But I would really love to know what you would have said. I love your comments so much. And the best place to leave that is on the podcast episode on my YouTube channel at Tidbits and Company. That's the best place to comment. But I would love for you to share with all of us that go down and read the comments what you would have said. What do we say to the next generation when they wonder if this is a role that they ever want in their lives? Please let us know what you would have said, what wisdom you have learned, and maybe what things we should not say in these moments. I'm almost here begging for your help. Will you help me raise the next generation of homemakers in my home and to say the right things? Because I'm just going to give you my perspective here today, and I know you've got some good thoughts, so please share them with us. And I know in saying this, it might feel like quite a bit of pressure, but I think we could all agree that our role in training the next generation of homemakers is quite pivotal. Not only to our families and our homes, but to shaping history. And so we could use everyone's input in this matter as possible. So please help us all as we do this work. But to my daughter, do I get sick of cooking, cleaning, parenting, correcting, decorating even, organizing, budgeting, scheduling, let's see, what else do we do? Driving, schooling. Let's just sum it up and say, do I ever get sick of adulting and being the main homemaker of our home? Yes, yes, I do, my dear daughter. Probably especially when you don't eat the food that I so lovingly make you, right? Now, here's what else I told her. I tried to explain to her that even if sometimes I do get sick of this work and get weary, if I think about it when I'm not too tired, there is truly nothing, absolutely nothing in this world I would rather do. If I could imagine working at a 9-to-5 job with a boss that determines my every move, or having to fill my days with coworkers, and that was the majority of my life, no, thank you. I want the majority of my life to be in my home. And I know we all can't fit that ideal. I know a lot of us have other responsibilities, but I was trying to show her, as she was definitely thinking career, schooling, and future in mind, that would I rather a 9-to-5 where I relied on a boss and a career? No, I honestly would not at this point in my life. Maybe I believed at some point that I would have, but at this point in hindsight, absolutely not. Would I rather maybe have a career and hire out things like babysitting, driving my kids around, cooking, cleaning, interior design, and decorating? Would I rather just hire that out and be doing other things? No way. Absolutely not. Now, okay, I'll be honest. Some days maybe I would like to delegate the cleaning. I've had cleaners on occasion when I was over my head, and that is nice. But I actually just prefer to be the one to do it because, you know, no one does it better than mom. But I still know deep down, even though those tasks can be heavy and make me weary, that the satisfaction that I get from keeping my home and caring for my own kids makes up for all of it. And I'd feel empty inside, truly, if I had to watch someone else do those things for me that I feel very capable and destined to do myself. I had her think with me, would I rather the world's honors of success and power and money, would those things be more fulfilling to me than the evidence of a well-run home, even if that home only consisted of a few members of society who wake up and call me blessed and depend on me for so much love and care? Would I trade all the world's acclimates for that satisfaction? And of course, the answer is no. For as David O. McKay said, no success in life can compensate for failure in the home. So I told her, though at times my role is extremely tiresome, repetitive, and very much unappreciated by my children, there is really no greater joy in life and no other work that I would rather do. And the challenge of the role, honestly, is what makes it all the sweeter, right? Now, I knew in my heart when I was talking to her that these were just words. Maybe she'd remember them, but they were likely to be forgotten. And I think they would likely be forgotten, especially when a time comes for her to maybe choose a career over staying at home, or having a family or being a homemaker, if she is just relying on my words that I just shared with her when she's in the thick of life and feeling herself being worn thin, those words would mean nothing. What I really needed to do was to step up and show her the joy of homemaking. And I think that is the key to raising homemakers. We must lead by example. So had my daughter just heard of my words of fulfillment and joy and blah, 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 but I didn't have any action or attitude to back that up, I really think it would fall on deaf ears. But if the next generation of homemakers can see us really enjoying the tasks of the day, and there are many, right? If we exude this attitude of really looking forward to putting our hands to work, enjoying their company, those whom we share our home with and keep our homes for, and if we just celebrate our accomplishments, even if it's folding 5 loads of laundry that day, if you show this enthusiasm for that really important work, it's going to be contagious, and they're going to feel and remember that far more than any preachimony you can give them at any given time in their lives. And I do suspect if they see that kind of joy and fulfillment in you through your actions, that they will likely grow up and crave the same lifestyle that you showed them at some point. I also believe, aside from showing them, leading by example, we also have the opportunity to teach them and be more proactive in the things that we actually help them learn. It is a great thing to take the next generation, whether they're your children or someone else's children, whether you're serving in a church, 4-H, your community, whatever it may be, to take the opportunity to teach the many, many skills that are required for a homemaker. And I think, well, at least it's my personality because I'm a control freak. This is a hard thing for me to do. I prefer to just sometimes do it myself rather than taking the opportunity to teach my children alongside me as I'm doing these things. But we can't just do it all for them. And let me tell you a story of a college roommate, right? We all have those stories. Now, bless her heart, I'm sure things are different now, but this was a lesson I just have never forgotten, and it's something that I always tell my children when they complain about the chores that I give them to do. So I had a college roommate freshman year. We're all thrown into like real life, right? And independence. And, it didn't take us long for the rest of us roommates to realize that she never cleaned up after herself. If she took a drink of something or sat down with food on the couch, the cups and bowls were all left there. She'd never clean up after herself. Her room was pretty dirty. And I just have to give her some grace. I know that adulting is not easy, but it was a little frustrating to have a roommate like that who didn't know how to pick up after themselves. And I only lasted 1 semester with her. And it taught me a really valuable lesson in life because we had a Mother's Week where the moms could come and actually be with us on campus. And her mom was the sweetest woman. We all adored her. But as I watched her mother, I realized that she went basically behind her daughter at all times, picking up after her and doing everything for her. And they gave her all the money. And, I'm not meaning to judge anyone's parenting here, but it was an observation I made that when we do everything for our children, when we do the things for them that they actually can do for themselves, we actually do them a great disservice for their future. And so we have to resist the urge, if we want to raise homemakers, to just do everything for them. Let them learn with you, grow with you, and get them involved and teach them how to do these things. Here's something else that I want to caution you with. It's something that I find myself doing, but if I get one kid that's really good at the dishes, I can trust them to put everything away where it goes, or I notice another kid is better at cleaning the bathrooms than others. Sometimes I get stuck in just like assigning those things out, and that means that they're only really learning that one skill when there are many more that they could learn. And so I have to make the continual effort to involve all my children in a lot of things and give them a variety of things to learn. Because if we want them to look forward to homemaking, we want to be able to show them that though some of the tasks are mundane, there's such a variety of things that you can be doing that it's going to stay exciting. And it's really exciting to be able to do what you want, when you want, and work on the things and the skills that you want to learn. So if we can actually help the rising generation understand that homemaking isn't just cleaning, homemaking isn't just cooking, that there is so much more involved in it, I think that is going to give a better message and make them a little more excited for it. And here's another example from my past. It's an example of what not to do from what my mother did. And bless her heart, I understand completely why she did this. But when I was younger, my mother just absolutely loved gardening. I could tell it brought her so much joy, and she was very, very particular about it. She would line up the rows so perfectly with rulers and string, and it was such a creative and rewarding thing for her. And when she wanted us kids to help in the garden, there was only one thing that we could do, and it was weeding. Let's just say that my attitude growing up about gardening was less than enthusiastic. I grew up thinking, I hate gardening. I will never have a garden. And that is because my mother only took the time to teach me about weeding, which is not fun, right? Now, I understand why she did it. This was her escape, and she was very particular, and there are things in my own life that I am doing the exact same thing about. But let us learn from that, that if we want these little ones to really see the joy and the reward of homemaking, we need to let them be involved and to teach them. And that might be harder for some of us than others, but I'm right there with you if this is a challenge, and we can do it. And since I just bashed my mom here, I gotta say, to her credit, she exuded a love for homemaking. And I also she passed away, my grandmother exuded a joy of homemaking that was so contagious to me that it really was all I truly desired when I grew up. Even though I went and got a teaching degree and furthered my education, I knew in the back of my head, homemaking was it for me. And everything about homemaking brought my mother so much joy and fulfillment. Even though she had to help run my dad's business, and that was a big part of her life as well. And later when he passed away, when I was just 11, she had to just take the reins for that and all the control, and she had to step into this major role as a businesswoman and figure out what to do there. Even though that was a part of her life, I clearly saw how much she enjoyed all the homemaking tasks, and she involved us. She taught us how to can, to preserve food. That was a big part of my upbringing. Cooking, I watched her find a lot of joy in decorating, and that became kind of the beginnings of my own obsession in decorating. Now, all she had were the JCPenney magazines, and you could order, all the same furniture, but she found so much joy in that. I remember her just laying rugs down and getting them perfect, and I watched that very carefully. And it became something that I wanted to do. She found a lot of joy in packing lunches for the boys before they headed off to work in the gravel pit, and just caring for her kids, driving them around and taking them shopping. So definitely watching her example was a big part of my life and who I am. And so I have to give her that credit, especially since I just dissed some of her some of her homemaking. So just know I love her and adore my mother, and I'm grateful that she helped me become the homemaker that I am. Now, even if you are not a parent or a grandparent, I know that in my youth, my desire to be a homemaker was very much nurtured by other people that I observed in my life, whether that was family, friends, aunts, neighbors, fellow members of my church, just lots of women and even men that showed me what a joy it was to keep a home. And I loved watching them. When I would get a chance to go babysit, I would just observe the tiniest things of how they did things, how things were run, and compare it to the other home. And this was something that I just had an obsession over at a very young age. So even if you aren't a parent at the moment, just know that you can have still a major impact, and that can do so much good in our world. So we talked about showing the rising generation how much we love homemaking and teaching them. Now, I want to just end with a little discussion that feels like, for me, an elephant in the room. Maybe it hasn't even crossed your mind, but this is a thing where I've tried to watch my words and tried not to offend. And that is homemaking a gender-specific role? Now, you are 100% allowed to have your own opinions here, but if you will allow me to share mine, I'll just share some thoughts with you. And this is something that actually has consumed my mind since I thought about the topic of this podcast to the deliverance. And I have been pondering the thumbnail. Now, if you guys are in marketing, or even if you just observed when you get onto YouTube or podcasts, the thumbnail, the image of that video is super important. And so I've had in my mind this image of me with my kids, and with the little caption on the thumbnail, raising homemakers. But I was lamenting inside, wondering if I should just include my 3 daughters on this thumbnail, or do I include my one and only son? And I really wrestled with this, in all honesty, because, I know traditionally, through the ages of time, homemaking has been considered a female role. I don't think any of us can deny that. And whether we blame nature for that, or nurture, or the way it was intended, or is it a social construct? I'm not going to get into that, okay? But this is something that we see still today and have generally seen in the past. And I would say culturally, for me, and this is why it shapes some of my opinions, the way I've been raised, the fact that the woman of the home is the main keeper of the home is just, I guess, common sense. Or it just makes sense that she who bears the children takes the lead of tending to the home and the hearts in the home. And that men are typically really good at providing and protecting. And there are these roles that, in my mind, based on what I've seen and what I've grown up observing, this is the path that just makes most sense. Now, while I still tend to lean towards those beliefs, I'd say 80% of my audience analytics here are women, so that shows me that I'm not too far off in my thinking here. So while I feel like the nature of the woman tends to be more suited to being the homemaker, I had a single comment on my channel that has never left me, that has really reshaped the way I'm viewing what I share with you and my audience. So when I talk about this stuff, I seem to always have this one comment in my mind, and it was from a gentleman. And he told me so kindly that he appreciated my blog, my podcast, my channel, and that what I was sharing was inspirational to him. And he told me that life had somewhat forced him into the situation where he had found himself as needing to take on the role of the homemaker and be the main keeper of the home. And isn't that just so worth considering? Even if something seems ideal for us, there is always going to be room in society and room in our lives to maybe reconsider or reshape what we're thinking, and that some men may have to be homemakers, or some men are actually better homemakers than the female in certain situations. So, it's just it's been a blessing for me to realize that so that I can maybe speak to that situation as well. And so if you're one of my few male listeners, I don't want you to feel left out. In fact, most of the time, I think my husband is actually better at homemaking than I am, and we often joke about it. My daughter even made an apron for my husband for Christmas and embroidered homemaker on it because that is what she sees. It's also a little bit of a joke, but he's really good at it, and he has these skills that he also learned and observed from his own mother, who absolutely loved everything about keeping a home, and that wore off on him. But anyway, the reason I share all this is because that is why I finally decided to include my son in the thumbnail of this podcast, because we are in fact raising homemakers. No matter what gender they are, we can all contribute to the keeping of a home and make it a wonderful place to be. So I just encourage anyone and everyone who's here with me. And whether we're talking specifically about gender roles, cultures, traditions, I think we can do absolutely no wrong in teaching our boys and our girls the joy of homemaking. Likewise, we can do no wrong in preparing the boys and the girls to someday have to shoulder the financial responsibilities of a home. I really do delight that I have a husband who isn't afraid to push up his sleeves and help us cook, clean, to care for the kids. And I see my son really carefully observing him and doing the same. When it's Saturday cleaning day, he has absolutely no inclination whatsoever that this is girls' work. He just dives right in and understands that his contribution in the family and the home life is super important. If anything, I know that his wife will someday just love to have a man who isn't afraid of helping her keep a home and to just help when needed, and that he's capable of doing that. So there really is no wrong in raising either way. And I also delight in showing my girls that I can use my talents to not only bless our home as the homemaker, but as a career, as I share the messages of my heart and my skills with the world. I really delight in bringing in some money to ease the financial burden of from my husband and to shoulder some of that responsibility. And it's quite a joy to work hand in hand with him. And as we've learned what to do and how to share these responsibilities and what is best for our family. And what I've learned there may be a topic for another podcast someday, but we've learned a lot about the truly deep desires in our hearts as male and female, and as we kind of work in these blended roles. So it's been really interesting to observe the last couple of years as we've done this. And I would just have to say that maybe I've been pushed to this mentality that I need to help financially with our family, or to always be prepared to have to do so, because in my youth, as I've mentioned, because my father passed away, there's always this idea in my head that someday, even as a female, it may be something that I would have to do. And so I always want to be prepared for that and educated enough that I could go and provide for my family if I needed to. So it really does no harm in blending, career and homemaking in the whole education of the whole child to help us raise the next generation. So just some food for thought as I share some of my experience and some of my thinking there. And let's just say, gender roles, cultural beliefs, all aside, I think we all know that the home is where the heart is. And may I propose that it is also the heart of the homemaker that makes the home. So may we all delight in raising the next generation of homemakers and just prepare us an army that is always ready to defend the most sacred organization of our society, that of the home and the family. And finally, to my 17-year-old daughter, I say there is no better job in the world than that of a keeper of a home. Now, if you are finding that you are eating this subject up and you need a little more inspiration, I invite you to go listen to my podcast, episode number 8, where I read you a magnificent story called When Queens Ride By. This may be one that you want to share with your all the future homemakers in your life because it is a story that quite literally changed me and my perspective on homemaking forever, and what I share here with you today. So definitely go listen to episode 8 if you haven't already, and I really hope you enjoy that story. That wraps it up for today, my friends. I am so grateful you have joined me. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and I will be back very soon to share more inspiration for the keeper of the home.